This chair was looking sad and kind of gross, so I decided to give it some new life with updated fabric. So last summer I recovered our kitchen bar stools. They turned out awesome, and I figured I was ready to tackle a chair. First, I needed to gather my materials. When I redid the stools, I bought new foam, but the foam on this chair is still in pretty good condition, so I decided to basically wrap the seat in new fabric for simplicity's sake. Also, one of the chair's feet snapped off, so we had to buy more of those. So if you're gonna buy fabric, you need to know how much fabric you need. And I had the great idea to use that iPhone app to measure since I didn't have a tape measure with me. It's worked great other times I've used it, so why would this time be any different? Dear viewer, this time was different. I never double checked my measurements with an actual tape measure, and then I bought fabric based on those faulty measurements, put the fabric next to the chair, and yeah, it was too small. So when you measure twice, buy once, and also use a real measuring tape. This of course meant another trip to Hobby Lobby to get the right size fabric, but I'm not complaining, I love craft stores. Also, make sure that you use a coupon on the fabric if it's not already on sale. We also grabbed those chair feet things from Lowe's or Home Depot, I don't even remember where at this point, but yeah, these things. Once I had my supplies, it was time to remove the seat from the chair. This seat had 4 screws to undo, and then I was able to remove the seat. I double checked that the seat was in good enough condition to encase inside the new fabric, then placed the seat face down on top of the face down fabric. Before trimming the fabric down, I played around with how I was going to wrap the corners. Essentially, I was checking that I had enough excess fabric to attach. Then I trimmed off the selvage, which is that fuzzy section along the edge, and trimmed off some of the excess width. Make sure that you leave enough to wrap all the way to the underside though. Now it's time to start stapling our fabric. First, I attached the 4 corners, making sure to pull any slack out of the fabric. Then I folded one corner to pull the excess around the curve of the corner. When stapling the corners, it's important that you keep track of where the screw holes are in your seat, so that way when you reattach the seat to the legs later on, it'll be easy. I used an awl to punch a hole through the fabric where the screw holes are. Once my 4 corners were attached, I decided to staple along one side. I started by folding the corners the rest of the way to remove any slack, and then while keeping tension on the fabric, I stapled along the edge. I repeated the process on the other side but forgot to film that part, but basically at this point the left to right tension was nice and even, and I just had to tack down the front and back edges of the seat. Again, I'm staying aware of those screw holes so that way I don't run a staple through the screw hole, and I'm also pulling some tension on the fabric to keep it smooth along the seat top and along the edges. For the back edge, I attempted this fancy overlap, fold kind of thing as I was pulling out the tension, but that was too hard to hold on to, so I just pulled tension along the edge and let the folds fall naturally. Now, this is not the case 100% of the time, but in general, the fabric will turn out smoother if you staple closer to the edge versus further in. Just you've got to make sure that the staples won't be in the way of the chair base and legs. I repeated the process along the front edge of my chair until my fabric was securely fastened all the way around. After checking that the seat looked good, it was time to trim the excess fabric. Now here's where I made a kind of mistake. I should have left a little bit more fabric so that way the fabric edges could be caught under the seat frame. Once I reattached the seat, it ended up looking like this. Not ideal, but I'll explain later what you can do to fix this. So anyways, I trimmed the excess fabric and reattached the seat to the frame. This goes easiest if you know where the screw holes are in your seat, and also if you run the screws through the frame, then you can see to actually align the seat. Once the seat was reattached, it was time to add the slider feet thingies. Since there were already holes from the one that broke, I thought I'd be able to hammer it right in, but it bent. So if yours bend or you don't want to risk them bending, the solution is to drill a hole. But then the drill bit broke inside the chair. So yeah, that was swell. Luckily, our second drill bit was more successful, and we hammered the slider foot into the pre-drilled chair leg. Then the other sliders that weren't broken didn't want to come out. So what I found worked best to remove them was to grab the foot with a pair of pliers and turn it almost like you were unscrewing it, even though it's not actually a screw and it's just a nail. Hopefully that makes sense. Once we got the other 3 out, we added the remaining 3 feet without incident, making sure to drill a hole first, and then at that point our chair was complete. Well, except for the fabric sticking out the bottom. If you remember from the start of this project, we didn't disassemble the seat at all. We just totally rewrapped it. So to avoid the fabric edge sticking out the bottom, you can remove the piece of cardboard from the bottom of the seat before adding the fabric and then reattach it to cover the fabric edge. Another option is to just leave it on there, staple your fabric like I did, and then run to Dollar Tree, buy a $1 poster board, cut it to sides, and staple it to the bottom to cover the fabric edges. I didn't get a chance to film this step before posting, so if that explanation doesn't make sense, drop a comment with your question and I will do my best to help. But that's how I recovered this chair. Being able to rewrap the existing seat made this project both faster and cheaper. Of course, the process was not flawless due to my own human errors and issues with the chair feet, but the end result turned out awesome. I hope this tutorial was helpful and inspires you to attempt your own furniture repairs and upgrades. If y'all enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it so much if you took a moment to like the video since it helps me reach more people. Make sure to come back next week for another Tutorial Tuesday. Happy crafting!